I'm Kat, an independent midwife from Wales. Welcome to the Mother of All Podcasts, where nothing is off the table of discussion. If it leaks, cries, swears, screams, goes up, but doesn't stay up, we're talking about it. It's time to get raw and real. Your no BS guide to pregnancy, preconception, birth, adolescence, wet dreams, wet in the bed, coming home pissed, who knows, whatever, we're just going to talk about it. Life and parenting doesn't come with a manual. Well, not a decent one anyway. So let's just create a podcast. Welcome to the Mother of All Podcasts. I don't even know where that come from.
That's good.
That's not even in it.
That's good.
Hello, welcome to this episode, and I'm with my buddy Simon, keeper of my hair, fluffer of my fringe. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll crack on.
So hi guys, my name's Simon. As Kat said, I'm a hairdresser. I own my own small salon in Cardiff. Married with a cat.
I love that. What's the name of your salon?
Crave Hairdressing.
A little bit of advertising.
Just a little bit of advertising, yeah.
So today we're literally going to be talking about you being gay.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool. Am I gay, am
I? Are you? Are you?
Yes.
Are you?
Yes, I am. Definitely.
And I remember when I asked you, the reason why was this podcast is about parenting, lifing and things.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wouldn't it be fucking amazing if someone would come on and talk about how they came out?
Yeah.
Like that story and what you would have wished more for.
Okay.
So my first question to you is tell me about, when did you first know you were gay?
That's really, really difficult to pinpoint, to be honest. I knew I was different, if that's the right word, from quite a young age.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought necessarily gay, because I had girlfriends when I was in school. I liked having girlfriends because it made me feel a bit popular.
Yeah.
And I did genuinely like them. Looking back, did I actually fancy them? Probably not. I probably wanted to do their hair or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you wanted them as a friend.
Yeah. Looking back, that is. But at the time, no, I didn't feel like that. And I'd say I probably didn't realise I was actually gay until I did the deeds and actually was with a guy properly.
And how old was that?
16.
Really?
Yeah. Prior to that, I knew say for instance, I had 2 or 3 friends who I'd had maybe experiences with.
Yeah.
But, we were very young, and we were both doing it. It was a mutual thing. So I didn't think, I'm gay. I just thought, I'm a bit dirty.
You felt dirty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously we weren't going to have the conversation because I grew up in Splot, so
Yes.
it was quite a rough and tumble area, and these boys were like, they were going to beat you up rather than have a conversation about that, do you know what I mean? So the conversation was never going to happen. So I think it was only when I actually left home and on a drunken night out I ended up with a guy that I thought, oh shit, I am actually gay, because I way preferred that than when I was with a girl.
With a girl?
Yeah.
Full on gay? Or did you think you were bisexual?
I probably thought I was bisexual for a little bit, because
Yeah.
I literally just lost my virginity to a girl and then literally just lost my virginity to a guy within the space of probably 2 months. That's quite close together, isn't it?
Yeah. This is going to be such a random question and I wasn't going to ask you this.
Ask me whatever you want.
Is that what most gay people do?
What do you mean?
As in God, that sounds so stupid. But as in
I can't speak for most gay people,
I know,
obviously.
but you've got a lot of friends, you've got a lot of gay friends.
Conversations I've had, I would say everyone's experience is different, but a lot of people I've spoken to have had similar situations where in high school, for instance, they had maybe the odd experience with one of their male friends who didn't turn out to be gay. They turned out to be gay, their friend didn't, and then they've come out by going onto the gay scene.
What, at a later age?
At a later age, yeah. So yeah, I think that happens a lot. I couldn't speak for everyone, obviously, but giving an example of Mark, my husband, his was the same. So in his teens, he had the odd experience with boys, but again, wasn't really discussed. But then he actually met somebody as a friend, I think, but they both did the deed, so to speak, and then that continued for a little bit. And then he, off the back of that, he came out, and that boy came out as well. So that's slightly different to my experience, obviously. But yeah.
Do you know when you were in school, and I know you had a rough time, as did I, were you ever called gay, even though you didn't realise you were?
Yeah. So I had a lot of female friends. I had male friends as well, but I had a lot of female friends. So I guess that sort of automatically
makes you gay.
Yeah, it makes you gay. So I had like a few of the rougher guys, you know, would walk past and go faggot, puff, or whatever. And to be honest, in part, I dusted it off because I was a bit of a class clown. So I think my coping mechanism, like my armour for feeling really vulnerable on the inside, was to act really out there on the outside. Yeah,
more of a clown.
You know? Be a clown, be very jokey, very jovial, and whatever. And I think I used to laugh that off, but actually, internally, it was probably quite crippling looking back. The girls used to be like, oh, that, whatever, to whoever
always
said
stick up for you.
Yeah. But there were a few, you know, nasty girls as well in school who'd come out with stuff. And because I had quite a lot of girlfriends, as in what would be deemed romantically as well, there was a bit of jealousy there. So that couldn't be that, you know, I don't know, I was just a nicer guy than the person. So that would automatically be like something to, I don't know.
Something else to hate you for.
Yeah, definitely. So I had a bit of bullying on that because I had girlfriends. And I, for whatever reason, maybe I was quite mature for my age at the time, but I had older girlfriends in school, which was a no-go.
Oh, my God.
So I got bullied for that. By boys of that age. So they were a lot older than me, which was quite intimidating, as you can imagine. And then obviously I had the whole faggot puff. Somebody actually wrote on the school wall in massive, like, pen or whatever, not pen, on the outside wall, like chalk or something, that I'd had a sexual experience with somebody else, like literally in the playground. Can you imagine that in the middle of high school?
How old were you?
14.
In
13,
Willows?
Yeah.
Fucking
so that
hell.
was like the end for me. That was where I pretty much stopped going to school.
Yeah.
Looking back.
And what did you do then? So you stopped going to school?
I didn't stop going completely, but I just felt really, really vulnerable there. So I get to the gates and I just couldn't go in. But I had a friend, a female friend. I won't mention her name just because I don't know how she feels about it. But she was pretty much in the same, not situation because she was gay or anything, but just hated school.
Yeah.
So we would like go on the mitch together all the time. But she never had, and I don't even know if she knows now, any reason as to know why I didn't want to be there.
So you never had that conversation?
Never have, actually. Until, and it's only now talking about it since that I've actually thought that's why. Now, literally, as we're speaking. Yeah.
How beautiful is that, though, that two people who had quite a bit in common, but you didn't realise what the commonality was, just supported each other, whether it was going on the fucking mitch or not.
We're still best friends now, and like we talk about it, like we really like hype ourselves up. We've got to go in today. And we get to the dates, we go, no, we can't, and for different reasons completely now. Upon reflection, don't get me wrong, I didn't love the school anyway. It was a rough school.
No, it was horrendous.
You know what the school was like. You know, whether people had a better time, of course they did. You know, but I didn't have a great time there.
Do you know, like that part, you didn't know you were gay, but you knew you were different. That part, all that bullying, because I know you had an awful time. Has any of it come? Have you like parked it, or do you see traits of it coming into your adult life?
I'd say for the majority of it, I've parked it. But actually, speaking about it now, I can still feel vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know, I can still hear it in my own voice.
I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah, so it's definitely not gone.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, I don't like blame anyone for that. You know, all of the people that gave me shit were going through their own shit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I know as an adult looking back, you know, some of those people have grown up to be arseholes. I see them now, and I still look at them and think, oh, wow, mate, like...
You're still a prick.
But also, what's their vulnerability? What was their upbringing like?
That's why they like it.
Yeah, so you can't... there's no hate in me for it, do you know what I mean? It's like, I haven't got any malice towards anyone for it. It is what it is. It's part of growing up, unfortunately. Hopefully, people like that do look back and reflect and think, well, you know, I can be a better person now. But I think they're all vulnerable in their own rights, so yeah.
Where we grew up, it was quite a vulnerable area. I think 90% of the people that live there, I mean, I'm not in touch with any of them now, like, as you said, probably all had their own issues of course. Going on.
And if they didn't, they, you know, like I wasn't bloody perfectly behaved in school in the sense of, like, because I had my own armour, you know?
Yeah.
So from a teaching perspective, I was always in top. How? I'm not quite sure, because I barely went and I barely did any work. But I always stayed in top, which obviously, looking back now, I must have been quite bright.
Yeah.
That otherwise. But, like I said, I wasn't one of those kids, like in our school, you had people throwing chairs at teachers and stuff. I wasn't one of them. But I was always cheeky, always back-chatting, always getting sent out, always on the mitch, always late. So that was, you know, from a teaching perspective, I probably wasn't the easiest child to manage. Then from a peer's perspective, I would say 90% of the time in school, I was that sort of kid who would always try and stick up for somebody more than I'd stick up for myself.
Oh,
but that doesn't mean that I didn't laugh along on times just to fit in.
Yeah.
And I look back at that and I think, oh, you
hate yourself for it.
Because there were so many vulnerable kids, more vulnerable than me.
Yeah.
You know, and they'd be being bullied. And when I say bullied, I mean pushed in the corridor or called a name or called smelly, whatever. And catch you in a moment, and instead of jumping in and standing up for him, I'd laugh along.
Yeah.
Well, that's an arsehole thing to do. So I can't blame anyone else for being an arsehole, because I've been an arsehole myself,
And sometimes that's worse, because I've been that person, and I've had that done to me, where I've like walked down a corridor in school, and because I was never in school, because I always ice skated, so whenever I went, and I was thick as shit.
You weren't thick as shit.
I felt thick as shit, because they make you feel like that, don't they? I've been picked on, and my two friends have been there laughing with them.
And that's more painful than the person picking on you.
It's shit. And I'm friends with them now. And we all, every time we're pissed, we have that same conversation with one of them. And I'm like, you still can't accept that you actually made me feel like crap. And I'm over it. And I'm grateful that we're still friends and I like you as a person. But you did make
just
me
own
feel...
That.
Just
own
fucking
it.
own it.
Yeah.
And I would, if I made someone feel like that and they told me, I'd be devastating. And I know you would. So did you finish school? Because it was so much easier to not finish school back in our day.
So basically what happened, I left home at 15. So I was still in school, technically, but I was never going, But
That's
I would say
wild.
from probably year 9, which is what, was it form 3 when we were there?
Yes.
And now it's year 9, yeah. So from probably the middle of that, I was very rarely going to school, very rarely. I'd turn up every now and again. I had 2 teachers that I could confide in a little bit, not about my sexuality, about like home life, what was going on at home. And so I would go to school and do sort of bits of the subjects I liked and I enjoyed, because I wanted to try and get my GCSEs, I ended up, I think, probably only sitting 4 exams out of like the 11 that I could have. So yeah, I completed school very, very, very loosely. I didn't go back for the last day. I didn't do the whole like leaving, writing names on t-shirts and all that. I know I'm not in the last school photo.
No, me.
And I don't think I ever went back to pick up my GCSE results, because I didn't give 2 hoots at the time. Now
I was going to ask, that was my next question.
Yeah, go on.
You have, because you are intelligent, don't like put yourself down.
Okay.
Anyone who has a conversation with you knows that you're well read or well researched. Do you have any regrets by that? Are you angry that they didn't make it an easy environment for you to go to?
Sometimes frustrated, I'd say, more than angry that the school didn't pick up on the fact that, like, my home life, when I look back, was pretty shocking.
Yeah.
And, like, all of this time I had off school, bearing in mind, no one ever bothered to find out.
Come and check up on you.
Me and my mate Martin, he lives in Thailand now, we went on the Mitch. Now, this is literally in the beginning of year... No, it was the end of the second year of high school.
Form 2.
Really young.
Yeah.
I got punched by a boy, Brownie, you know who you are, I live in Barry. We've had conversations since, it's fine. Punched, knocked out over a conversation that went a bit awry. He was like the hardest boy in the school, and he was older than us, so basically we were like shitting ourselves, because Martin should have been the one who got punched, really, because it was their beef, but I stuck up for him.
You stuck up for him, classic.
So anyway, cut a long story short, we went on the Mitch that day, and then we didn't go back for 6 weeks.
And no one checked up on you?
Do you know why they checked up on us? Because it was just coming to the school summer holidays, and I was like, if we don't go back, and then we got to go into next year, we wouldn't have been there at all. Like, they might not even register us. We better go back in. So we went back in like 2 days before the summer holidays finished, and because then they remembered that they hadn't seen us for so long, they sent the Bordy guy. Do you remember?
Yeah, he was always at my house.
Yeah, he was a weirdo, he was. But anyway, they sent him to my parents after the event, mind. So I didn't mention anything to us. We just went back to school. And then I got home from school that day, and my mum was like, where have you been? I was like, school. And I genuinely had, even though I hadn't been.
Yeah, you weren't lying that day.
No, not at all. And she was like, no, you haven't, Julia. And I was like, I have. I've just come from school, genuinely. She thought I've had the Bordy here with a police officer because you haven't been in school for 6 weeks. And then I had to sit down and cry and go, okay, I got punched by Brownie. No. And then I was too scared to go back to school. And that was a bit of an unravelling as well. But I did go back because obviously we were worried we wouldn't be registered.
Yeah.
So, and then, like I said, year 9 then, that thing was written on the wall, and I was just like, oh, I'm done.
I'm absolutely done.
Yeah, even though I did, like I said, dip my toe back and forth. So yeah, I'm a bit frustrated that the school didn't pick up on what was going on and maybe try a little bit harder.
Well, they would now. Too much sometimes, because I had it was one of mine.
But my grandparents, which I couldn't have done because, it wouldn't have been in my nature, they were trying to, like, pull me out of my parents' house all the time because they could see that.
The carnage, the chaos.
Yeah. And but they weren't... If they'd pulled me out, they would have had to pull my sisters out, and they weren't. They were just trying to pull me out. I don't know why. Maybe because they saw something more vulnerable in me. I don't know. And then I would have gone to Whitchurch High, and I wish that I had been more selfish and gone, do you know what? Because I left home at 15 anyway in the end.
Of course.
I think had I gone to Whitchurch High and stayed with my grandparents in Birch Grove, it would have been a whole different world for me, I think. But there we are.
Yeah.
You don't know those, because
I know.
I've done pretty well.
I was just going to say, would have you gone down this road if...
I don't know. And would I have still gone to school? I don't know, because maybe I just hated school at that point.
Because I've reflected on it, and they dumped me because I always had skating, and obviously I was clearly dyslexic, and they did tell my mum, but whatever. I have no regrets, because I think I would have ended up going to uni and doing a course that I didn't want to do, and wouldn't have found the way that I am now.
Yeah. I can't say it's a regret. I do reflect on it
wonder,
sometimes, and I wonder, as to where.
Yeah, because you like learning.
I love learning.
I love learning as well.
The subjects, like the teachers that were good and the subjects that I liked, I really, really, really liked. And like now I look back and I love geography and history, right? I'm not very good at geography because I've got no sense of direction for one, but I like the idea of it, and travel, obviously, I love. And history, I love. But those two subjects were so poorly taught in our school, and the teachers were so like boring. Like,
they hated their
boring.
jobs.
Yeah, literally. That you'd come away... I can't imagine anyone in my year, certainly, come away from those subjects
and going into doing a history degree.
Absolutely not. But if I'd have gone to a different school with different teachers, I'm sure those subjects would have been amazing. You know? Like, I loved English, loved art, loved drama. Can't understand why. But, yeah.
I got an A in drama.
The creative stuff I really liked, you know?
Do you mind talking about your childhood?
No.
Okay. If you could just describe what your house was like, your upbringing.
Mental. Parents were very volatile with each other. My mum was 11 years younger than my dad, so looking back, she must have been super, super vulnerable, because she was probably 16 when they met and he was 27.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was married with 2 children. The stories that they both tell are very different. Obviously, my mum's passed now, but the story that I always was brought up from my mum and my grandparents to believe was that basically my dad sort of like chased after my mum.
Yeah.
My mum did find my dad really attractive. I think he was a good looking guy in his day, and he had like a bit of a sports car and stuff. She believed that he was divorced or going through a divorce, but my grandparents believed that he was actually still with the woman when he chased after my mother. My mum says that my grandparents pushed her initially towards him, thinking that he was just a handsome chap who drank in the local pub with his own little business.
But 11 years older?
Yeah, they completely deny that and say no, not at all. They tried everything to stop him.
To stop her?
I wonder whether there's a bit of truth in both sides, or maybe initially they didn't realise how old he was or his background. Yeah. Pushed her towards him because he was a nice-looking guy who drank in the pub with the car. Then found out that he was married, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that his wife, ex-wife now obviously, but his wife was the cousin of my mum's brother's girlfriend. So she knew about the history, and apparently he wasn't a particularly nice husband. He was sort of a womanizer.
Wow.
But he was also a massive alcoholic, you know.
Yeah.
And he grew up not knowing who his dad was, so he's got his own vulnerabilities there.
Cyclical.
Yeah. And my mum then can't beat enjoying mentality. I wouldn't have called her an alcoholic. I'm sure one of my sisters would completely disagree and say yes, she was.
And we've all got different upbringings.
My nan and Bamp would say yes, she was. I would have said that my mum was a heavy drinker on the weekends. Apparently, she used to drink through the week on weeknights as well. I don't remember that personally. I just remember on the weekends having a good old laugh with the girls that come around. My dad only took her out like once a month to the social club. She was a bit young for that, really.
Yeah.
You know? So I think when my dad was out, she'd have like some of the girls around. That's what I saw her as. She'd get a bit wasted. My dad would come in at stupid o'clock in the morning. They'd have a massive fight. The whole house would be physical, like blood up the walls fighting. Yeah, it was bad, really bad. We'd get involved trying to break it up. It was horrific. Yeah.
When you speak to your sisters about it, do they have a different perspective?
Me and my older sister have had massive conflict over the years. We agree on quite a lot of it, but then there's lots where she sees it from her perspective, I see it from my perspective, which is natural. We've had arguments over it because I'm like, absolutely not, that's not what happened. And she's like, yeah, it is, and she's got a better memory than me. Probably have, in all fairness, because she's never drank like I've drank, to be honest. Because whilst I don't drink, every day or anything, on the weekends, from probably the age of about 12.
It's a weekend.
I battered it.
Yeah.
You know? And always have. So she hasn't, because she had kids from a very young age, obviously. So maybe her memory is better than mine, I don't know.
And she's the oldest.
And she's the oldest, even though it's like barely 2 years.
Yeah.
But then my younger sisters have got a very different experience, because I think my dad, because we always had my mum's back, certainly I did. Well, no, Sarah did as well, actually, I reckon. We always had my mum's back. more than my dad's, because I saw my mum as vulnerable to my dad, and he's old-fashioned, whatever you want to say. He's a bloke who was a former boxer and stuff. My mum was a dainty little woman,
physically fighting.
She would always defend herself, and I don't know if she was scared of him or not, but she'd fight back. She wasn't like cowering in the corner. So in part, they were both to blame. Of course they were. But like one man goes around like punching a woman who's like 5'1".
Yeah, your mum was tiny.
Yeah, like I just can't ever get my head around that.
Can't fathom it.
No. But of course, it's alcohol, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she'd be accusing him of stuff because he'd come in with like lipstick on the collar and smelling a perfume. Of course, he never ever did anything. She was making all that. But I've actually seen the lipstick on the collar and stuff. It was just a very twisted relationship and very messy, and we were dragged into it. It was quite horrific. Like when I think of the violence that we witnessed and being involved in that, so yeah, pretty shit really.
What so it's only just now I've realised that you were 16 when you realised you were gay. I genuinely thought it was, so you weren't even living at home.
No, I left home at 15 because my mum and dad had had a divorce by that point, which we were very happy about.
Yeah, of course.
They were divorced. That was super messy, as you can imagine. I mean, if their marriage was messy, their divorce was even messier. Yeah. My mum, looking back, was very vulnerable, but I don't want to say neglect, that's the wrong word, but she sort of was getting on with her own thing. You
can say neglect, though, because you're still an adult.
I know, but
it's not nice.
No, I don't want to say.
It's horrendous.
Because I was, neglect is not necessarily intentional, is it? No, it's not.
No, it's not. She didn't realise what she was doing. I say that.
So she was a bit neglectful to the house, I'd say, at that point. The house was always spotless, our clothes were always clean, we were always fed, but as I've always said, Bernardo's do that for you. That's not great parenting.
No, not at all.
That's standard. And she was an amazing housekeeper, she really was, and like if I was ill, I wouldn't want anyone else there,
to look after
the whole,
The
she
Lucas
was very
aid.
the Lucas. Oh my God, you just took the words out of my mouth. The orange wrapper.
Yeah.
I used to suffer with like massive growing pains in my legs and stuff, and like she massaged me for like an hour and a half to stop me, being upset before I go to sleep when I was little. I can remember that. She was really good in that practical sense.
Yes.
She wasn't particularly good emotionally though.
Yeah.
Probably she had so much shit going on. 4 kids, a husband who was an absolute arsehole, and her own backstory of her childhood. Not an abusive childhood at all. My grandparents were, great in that sense, but everyone's got a story, haven't they?
We said to our kids on our last podcast, if you ever end up in therapy, as lush as they think we are, it's our fucking fault. We've done something wrong. You can't, it's in human nature.
I don't think fault is necessarily the right word, though, because no one's doing this on purpose. There are people out there who literally...
They are, but your mum wasn't one of them. My mum isn't, my dad, me and Nathan aren't.
No. Everyone's doing what they think is their best.
At that time.
But going back to the mum thing, so she's obviously doing her own thing, and she had a few boyfriends who were a bit younger, and which didn't sit comfortably with me at all. But I wanted her to be happy, obviously,
Yeah.
And then it all just came to a head, really. There was a big family falling out, a big row, and basically I was given an ultimatum, as my sister was, basically living under my roof, fair enough. You live by my rules,
Classic
so you don't... Now, bear in mind,
mum.
I've been going clubbing for like 3 years.
And you're 15.
Yeah, 2 years. So when I was 13 was the first time I went to a nightclub for my friend's 18th. It was actually his 16th. And from that point on, I got a taste for it.
Yeah.
And I was going out every weekend. So I was going out, I was staying at my friends without telling my mum where I was, which is a bit disrespectful, but I wasn't being told no either. I was doing my own thing. I was smoking, I was drinking, I was smoking weed, I was taking acid. All from like 13, like really, really young when I think about it. But I thought I was on the time of my life. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to, like, now all of a sudden conform to this
when
structure.
You haven't ever had
no, I've never done
boundaries
it.
or structure.
And I had no respect at this point anyway.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone. That moment's gone. So
She's literally a babysitter at this point.
So I just, again, probably not the right decision to make. Was I thinking of my little sisters? Not really. But I just went, okay, then I'll go. I went out that day. I think I thought I was calling her bluff. I come home and all my bags were packed in the hallway. I was done, like, I'd go. But I think she was calling my bluff because she thought, then I go, oh, okay, I'll stay. I went, no, I won't.
Where did you go?
So a friend of mine who, her parents like quite hippie-ish, who were stoners, both like amazingly intelligent people, like one university lecturer, the other one was like really senior in social services, but they were like massive stoneheads, and they just let her do whatever she wanted, and that was like such a, perfect situation.
Place for you to go.
So they'd had a bust up, and the father had ended up in hospital. So another crazy household, but probably felt quite normal to me. Basically, I just phoned her and said, oh, you're not going to... She phoned me, sorry, in my mum's house. She phoned the house phone, so you're not going to believe what happened to my mum and dad last night. My mum's been arrested, my dad's in hospital. I was like, what the hell? Well, you're not going to believe what happened to me last night. I've got to go today. All my bags are packed. She went, come here then. So she lived on Penarth Road. So off I went with all my bags to Penarth Road and stayed with them for a little while. Then my sister, because she'd left obviously as well, and she just had a baby. Sarah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she just had a baby. So she was at her own house. Her and her then husband, well then partner, and the baby had moved into a house. So she said, you know, you can stay.
Just come and stay with me.
Literally a couple of streets away from my mum. Awkward. So I stayed there for a little bit, and then basically I put myself on a housing list.
And you got...
I lived in a hostel. So at 16, as soon as I turned 16, I was able to go into the hostel. So I moved into the hostel. I can remember my grandparents dropping all my stuff there, and my grandpa like crying in the car, going to me, "Can you just come and stay with us?"
I was going to say, why didn't? Because you would never in a million years have been able to party like you did if you stayed.
A few
with them.
reasons, yeah. I didn't. I felt really guilty at the thought of me going to stay with my grandparents when my sisters were still at home. So that was part of it. The other part of it was, I wouldn't have done that to my grandparents. I did have loads of respect. I wouldn't have been staying out. But then what would I have done if I didn't go out with all my friends now, you know?
Yeah. That was your life.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah. Looking back, I probably would have got my head down and been a bit more sensible. But, you know, again, would I be where I am now if I did? I don't know. No one knows today.
No.
So, yeah, I can't regret that. I had a scream in the hostel, I have to say. I hate...
Is it the YMCA?
Yeah, on Oakfield Street.
That's where I stayed.
So I hated it going in because it was bogging and the people were all really rough and
do you remember
chatty.
the dining room?
Yeah. So I hated it going in, but I was brought up in a very, very clean household. Even though we lived in Splot, all my family lived in like Lisvane, Rabina, all that sort of stuff. So I had all that around me. So that was the other thing. People used to call us snobs because my dad had like his own business and stuff. We were definitely not snobs if you saw the violence inside the house and the alcoholism and stuff. But living in Splot, this sounds really snobby now, but living in Splot I don't think was ever for me. I hated it. Even growing up, I just used to be like, no, I'm going to my grandparents, going to my cousins' houses, do you know what I mean? I always felt like the poor relation.
That's not snobby.
No, but... So I went into this hostel, there was like blood in the room, there was no lock on my door, it was broke. I was like, I can't stay here. So I complained, and in all fairness, they painted the room for me, give it a deep clean, and they put a lock on. I think 'cause I was the youngest person in the hostel as well. But, like, made friends really quickly because I think because I was young, everyone wants to be, like, the big brother, big sister, whatever. I can remember going to, like, Butlins on an adult weekend at 16 with loads of people in the hostel. Like, who does that? So, actually, I had quite a good time in there for a couple of months. Met some really good people. One girl particularly, Carrie, who lives in Barry as well, actually. Still, you know, we don't see much of each other, but still really good friends. She was a bit older than me, and she was like a big sister, you know? Yeah. She was... very honest, not wild at all. Like coming out, but she'd have a couple of Bacardi breezes where we'd all be off our face. You know? So she was quite sensible, so she was quite grounding, really. So thanks, Kerry, for that, because she's a good girl, you know. But yeah, and then I was put in a flat on Llandaff Road. Am I going completely off on a tangent? This is not what you asked, is it?
No, I did.
So yeah, I was put in a flat on Llandaff Road, which was like temporary accommodation. The other bit I missed is I had to hide from social services because I was under 16 when I got kicked out. Social services was like going to my school. That's another reason I couldn't go to school. They would turn up to school because they were going to take me into care because I didn't technically have anyone looking after me.
Hell.
So I had to hide until I was 16 from social services. And then at 16, Bernardo's approached me, the charity, and said, if you will go into this temporary accommodation from the hostel where there's an office, it's technically like...
parental guidance, not parental, you know what I mean, guardianship.
But there'll be somebody there if you are vulnerable. If you go there for, I think it was 6 months, we'll look at housing you in your own property as independent. But if you don't, you still may have to go into care until you're 18. And I was like, well, that's not happening.
Jesus Christ.
So I agreed to that. So I went into this programme. I was the only male in there. All the girls downstairs were like young mothers.
Yes.
It was quite a weird setup, really, to be honest. But yeah, that was quite cool.
I loved the YMCA. Retract. I was 15 as well, but obviously I was living there with my mum and my nan. I totally understand why you loved it. I hated it because I was still in school and I used to get called a jippo and shit like that. Classic. But it felt like a fucking community, and you don't have that anymore. Like there's no village around you unless you go searching for it. So again, we're not the kind of people that would just be like, oh, woe is me.
No.
Find a positive in it.
Well, yeah, and also like all the other people in the hostel were there for their own reasons, and some of their backstories were horrendous. You know? And I know looking back, mine was pretty much. If I really,
yes, it was.
It wasn't normal, you know, but. I didn't see myself as being anywhere near as bad off as some of them, you know.
Yeah. No, because there's always someone worse, but also that stops.
But even my sister left home at the same time. And before she got that house, which was
She'd
quite
stay
quick.
in a mother and baby, did she?
She'd stay in a mother and baby place in Ely. You know,
and they're awful.
Yeah, well, I think I went there once, maybe. I think I went there once. It was a very short period of time because obviously she was a single mum with a baby and she was very young. I think she was only 18 when she had Jamie Lee. So luckily she was housed quite quickly. Still, I mean, imagine I was on my own. Imagine being with a baby. You know,
on your own with a baby.
Yeah, because I don't think her, the father of the children, Matthew, I don't think he was allowed to stay there. I think she had to be there on her own.
Yeah, my sister.
I think he went and stayed at his mother's.
When we were in the YMCA, my sister was in a mother and baby hostel because they couldn't house us all together. Okay, so you got your own little flat.
Yeah, so I went from that 6-month place. I think they let me out like I was in prison. They let me go early because actually I could die on my own clothes.
And at this point, you didn't realise you were gay?
No, so at this point, right, so in the hostel, I was going out with a girl, and that's when I don't think she knew I was losing my virginity. She probably could tell upon reflection. You know, 'cause she was quite well versed in the bedroom where I clearly wasn't. But I don't think I said,
this is my first time.
Go. And actually, do you know what? I really enjoyed it. I can't say it. Yeah, I did. But
do you think it's because it was a milestone then?
Yeah, 100%. I thought, I'm a man now.
I ticked it off.
Yeah, because obviously I've been growing up in an area like that with all the rough and tumble boys, I was trying to put the front on. Everyone was like pretending they were having sex from 13. They'd all slept with 20 women.
Weren't.
No. Yeah. They had lots of masturbation. Do you know what I mean? So I was doing the same story.
Of course.
With my straight friends that I'd slept with girls. I hadn't, obviously. So, so I have to say I did enjoy it. I didn't, and I don't regret that at all. But as soon as I'd been with the guy, I mean, the first thing I did when I went with the guy was I went home and cried and scrubbed myself in the shower.
Felt dirty.
Oh, yeah, my God. And I went back and met that guy again. I did exactly the same. For about 3 times, I went home, cried, scrubbed myself in the shower. But I knew, even though I felt like that afterwards...
You were gay?
I knew that feeling with that individual was very different to the feeling with the girl. And whilst that was just a tick box milestone, I wasn't going to go back and do that again. That felt way more natural. But I just couldn't accept it because it made me feel like the acceptance of myself. Then I have to admit that I am gay then.
And do you know when you realised you were, all the names you were called in school, do you think that had an impact into you hating yourself for being gay?
Definitely, because it was such a negative thing around it. And like the only
no one said, oh my God, you're fucking gay.
Yeah, which people would now. But again, obviously there's loads of people who are not, there's lots of people out there who are still homophobic, of course there are, but it is a much more enlightened world now, I think, generally. And I see like loads of youngsters camp as Christmas and just living their best life and being exactly who they want to be, And I just think, good for you, like, great. But if it hadn't had such a negative connotation, like the only gay people I knew, were in the press, and it was always something quite negative attached to it, like HIV or somebody being caught in toilets or whatever.
Yeah, because what's this, 25, 30 years ago? How old are you?
45, so 30
years ago.
My God, that's scary, isn't
I know.
So there was always like a negative side to being gay in the press. And then obviously when you look at like school, there weren't many people in my school. I mean, now I know there were, but there weren't many people that were obviously gay. And there was one guy, Mark, who was absolutely bloody, looking back, the bravest person. He was really camp in school. He loved Madonna. He owned his shit. He didn't give two hoots. Of course, he got called names, but he just didn't care.
Was fine.
He minced down the corridor with power. But I used to think, well, I'm nothing like that. And he's obviously gay, but I'm nothing like that, so I can't be gay.
Wow.
Because again, the representation of gay for me was somebody who's really camp, really out there, a bit of eyeliner on, dancing down the corridors of Madonna. That wasn't me. I liked R&B, and I liked a check shirt and a pair of jeans and a pair of kickers,
And you liked girls.
I thought.
Yeah. When actually you just wanted to be their friends.
Yeah. So that's when I knew I was gay, and whilst it was still difficult to come to terms with, it was also quite enlightening as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Once you so you told your family?
No, the coming out wasn't great really. So I'd gone with this guy. That was it. Couple of goes.
Yeah.
Done and dusted for whatever reason. I can't even. Probably because I hadn't come out. I wasn't ready for it. Yeah. And then I hadn't come out to anyone. Me and the girl then broke up because obviously I got it at that point. Now this isn't going to go anywhere.
A light bulb went off.
Yeah.
Did you tell her?
No, not the slightest. Obviously, she knows now that I'm gay, but she wouldn't have known about that situation. So I hadn't come out to anyone, but I'd started then going to the gay scene. Sorry, this guy took me to a gay bar.
Yeah.
And the guy I was just on about who owned his shit in school.
Yeah.
I walked into this gay bar really vulnerable, going to him, what if I see somebody I know? He said, if anyone you know is in here, they're gay anyway, so don't worry about it. I said, what if one of my dad's friends or something sees me? He said, well, why are they in a gay bar?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so we walk into this gay bar, exit, do you remember him?
Yeah, of course.
Go to the bar, Mark, the boy I'm on about from school, working in the barman because he was older than me. Yeah. I walked in, I was like, I must have gone white. He went, Simon, I'm not going to say anything, don't worry. But obviously I was 16, I shouldn't have been in there anyway.
Yeah.
So I had a beer with this guy, sat in a little booth, and I was just like, I don't like it.
I was going to say, did you
so
love it?
So we left, and then me and this guy didn't see each other again. Well, we did later on, but, you know. I then used to turn up to that street in the night after I'd been out with my straight friends, thinking I want to go in the gay bars, but I didn't have the confidence. And then one of my friends who used to go to Club X all the time, massive like raver, her and a boyfriend were like, why didn't you come to Club X? And I was like, there's a gay bar in it. And they were like,
so you still hadn't told them?
I think they worked it out, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a gay bar. And then they were like, yeah, but look, we're going. So I went and met him, and that's how I went. I didn't actually end up meeting him. I went to meet him, and they ended up leaving and going to the Hippo because I was late.
Yeah.
So I just went in there anyway. And I met a guy on the dance floor.
Yeah.
Took him back to my flat, and we ended up together for about 4 months. And yeah, basically, him and his best friend convinced me to phone my sister.
Yeah.
And tell her. So I phoned her from the Haze.
Who?
From
Sarah?
The payphone. Yeah. And was like, I got something to tell you. And when I told her, she was like, oh my God, is that all? She said, I knew. I said, how did you know? Because I just knew. She said, I needed you to know, though.
Yeah.
You know? And I just thought you were going to tell me you had AIDS or something. Why are you so upset?
Oh my God.
And I was like, because you're the first person I've told, away from obviously these people who were gay. So then I told my friends. So that's all that knew. My sister Sarah knew, and my friends. And when I say my friends, the new friends that I'd made.
Yeah,
in
none
this
of
new
your
life.
old friends.
No. And then my actual coming out to my mum was horrific, because I was going out with an older guy who told me he was 25 and I was 17, I think, just turned. Yeah, I was just turned 17, was going out with this older guy that I'd met in a club after me and this boy had split up. The whole backstory to that, that's another podcast. And basically, he told me he was 25, turned out to be 32. Yeah, when I was 17.
He's a pedo.
Well, I think that I was 17, so... horrible guy. I found out so much about him since and seen him with other young guys. Very weird guy. But anyway, so I was going out with him. We'd split up because he was violent and aggressive and blah blah blah. And I was strong enough at that point to go, this is not right.
Yeah.
You know? And he wasn't having any of it. So he turned up to my flat one night while I was out. And this boy that I used to go out with, John, we were still friends. And his best friend, John Paul, were at my flat. And I think I'd gone out to like get something from the supermarket, whatever, and I was walking back.
And you've seen him?
I saw him in the corner of my eye, because he didn't live far from me, but I didn't think anything of it. When I got to the flat, the boys were both crying, and they were like, Carl's just turned up, and basically, we opened the door, and he's forced his way in. He's like smashed a load of your like ornaments over there. He's taken some of your stuff. I don't know what he's taken. He's taken all my hairdresser and stuff he had for work, and he's gone. And he hit one of them as well. So I go storming down to his flat.
Because you're like 6'5".
Obviously, massive. And I'd gone past the point of being scared of him. I was like really raging. So I'd gone down to the flat. He'd stolen I had like a digital file of fax. He'd stolen that. He'd tried getting hold of my mum. I don't know where she was. Couldn't get hold of her. She must have been out or something. So he's rang my grandparents from the file of fax and said, Simon's in grave danger, because he's nuts. Simon's in grave danger. Like, come and help him, and just put the phone down. My grandparents were away, I think. Has he phoned their Spanish number, maybe? So anyway, cut a long story short, I can't remember exactly what happened. My mother and Martin, her husband, turn up in a taxi whilst I'm outside his flat, and the police have turned up. Now, the police have turned up because the neighbours have called the police, because we're like screaming at each other through the window. My mum and Martin turn up and go, what's going on? I'm like, why are you here? And they were like, well, somebody told your grandparents you're in grave danger, which would have been him, obviously. And the police go, oh, sorry, you can't come over here. They're having a domestic. My mum was like, what do you mean a domestic? He said, oh, I think they've split up. And that was how I came out. My mum went, what, he's your boyfriend? I said, no. And she said, well, I don't understand. I said, I don't want you to understand, Mum. Just go home. And I just ran off crying to my flat. And then I literally had to, I think I avoided her for weeks.
Did she try and get in touch with you?
No. She got hold of my grandparents and was like, can you go and see him, sort of thing. Because we obviously had left home. So
you've
we
been
had
estranged anyway. So she never tried, that was it? She didn't try and...
No, not really. I think... my grandparents said she was really upset. They went down and she was crying her eyes out, and they were like, "Why are you crying?" We always knew he was gay since he was a little boy.
No way.
And my mum was like, "But I'm upset because I didn't know." That's what she was, not because I was gay, because she didn't know.
She didn't know.
So I think she felt instantly like she let me down at that point. You know what I mean? But no, she didn't. I can't ever remember her reaching out about it. But at that point, I had started going to the house occasionally to see my sisters anyway.
Yeah.
So we were sort of rebuilding. So it just happened naturally. Like, she never had an issue with it.
Did she ever ask you about it?
No.
In those early days?
No. It's a really weird one. Like, considering like how volatile the relationship was, and my mum and dad, I think, were quite sexually active after they'd have these massive bust-ups, and I could hear what was going on, which is gross.
That's a classic.
Gross.
Like 1980s divorces.
Yeah, and my dad was like sexually inappropriate as well, verbally, with my mum. Like, we'd hear all that, and it was like gross. Again, so sex and my brain didn't work very well together. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was already so much cringe factor over it. So I can remember having condoms in my bedroom when I was 14 because me and Martin
wanted you to talk about this.
Yeah?
Yeah.
My mum found them and like basically threw them at me in front of my grandmother on the dining table and like, "What are these?" I said, "Well, do you know what they are? What do you think you're doing having these in your bedroom?" And I was like, "Hang on a minute. Let's not have a discussion about sex. You're actually having a go at me
for being safe. Even though I wasn't having sex, as I've told you before. Yeah.
It was more about being cool, buying some
bravado.
condoms from the pub toilet, you know?
Yeah.
Because me and my friend were going to go out and have sex with who I'm not quite sure about, you know, so we had to pack, I had to pack. And that was it. They were there purely for bravado, so... But
and that was her reaction.
How weird is that you wouldn't sit down and go, "Oh my God, I wasn't expecting you to be sexually active at this age. You know, are you great that you're being safe, but can we have a conversation?" There was none of that in my household. Like, just
did you vocalise those feelings to her? So did you say?
Yeah, I said like, "What, you're having a go at me for being safe?
Being safe.
Wow, like, what is that about? You know?"
And what did your grandmum say?
She was just sat there gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked.
Yeah, but I don't think gobsmacked at, like, she was gobsmacked at my behaviour because she would have been exactly the same prudish as my mum. And my mum was brought up in a really prudish. My nan is so prudish. So like,
what did they...
How they had children, I don't know, because she clearly have never had sex. You know?
Is that prudish?
Yeah, she's that prudish.
What did your grandparents say? If they said, "We've known since he was little," what did they say?
The only thing my nan said, which was really weird, was she was like, so she's known since I was a kid, is what she's told my mum. And I was in her kitchen one day and she said to me, "You know that girl down the road?" I was like, "Well, the spotty one, the ginger one down there, yeah." She said, "Yeah."
Spotty.
She was, you know, not to be nasty, but that's how I remembered her. She was really spotty and she had really bright ginger hair. And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "Well, she's told her mum that she has a crush on you," sort of thing. I was like, "Right." She went, "Well, you could go out with her then."
How old were you?
This was after I'd come out. So I was like 17. I went, "What do you mean I could go out with her?" She
Did
said,
you say, "I'm gay"?
I said, literally in my nan's kitchen, I said, "What do you mean I can go out with her?" She said, "Will she go out with you?" I said, "Nan, I'm not gay because I can't get a girlfriend. I'm gay because I like
There's
men."
loads of them out there.
There's loads. They're easier to get than the boys, but it's because I actually like men. Like, what do you not understand about it? She went, "I just wondered." She said, "And your friend Kerry, she really likes you." Kerry I was on about from who lives in Barry. I was like, you're missing the point. But I never understood that. I never understood why she was like trying to push me in that direction.
Trying to make you not gay.
Even though she said she'd known I was gay since I was a kid. And her two best friends, who were a gay couple, even in days when it was still illegal, she was hanging around with this gay couple, and my grandpa was really accepting of it. So she's never had an issue with it. I don't know whether she just didn't want it for me because she knew how vulnerable my life would be, maybe.
Yeah.
Or potentially could be.
Yeah, like what we were saying in the car earlier when we were talking about...
But she's, like, they absolutely, like, obviously I lost my mum, but my nan and pap absolutely adore Mark.
Oh, no,
you know?
you've got a really good relationship with them.
And then there's no issue at all. Like,
No.
we took my grandpa away, didn't we, for boys' weekends, and like
lush.
he didn't want anyone else to go, just the two of us, and there's no issue at all. So.
Do you know, I was going to say you come out, but you didn't. You had to.
I was outed.
You were outed, basically.
It was a horrible way for my mum to find out, and obviously it just made me feel like even shitter about myself, really, in the situation. But at least, I mean, at what point would I have told her? I
was just going to say, how long would have you waited? It's shit what happened, but when would have you come out? Because you hadn't at that point. You hadn't even accepted it yourself.
It was only my sister, and I hadn't come out to...
Your younger sisters?
And I hadn't come out to my friends of old, if that makes sense, either. So that just came about organically, like you bump back into them, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm sort of feeling my feet. So I went through quite a out there camp stage as well when I first came out. So when I very first came out, I was in check shoes. No, I didn't have check shoes. Nice. Check shirt and jeans, just like all the boys were wearing, you know. And then people kept going to me all the time, are you bisexual? Are you straight? And I was like, oh my God, I've just come out. And now everyone's asking on the scene. So I sort of started like mimicking the camper ones, which was quite funny, like wearing velour tops and really fit. Not at all. No. I did that for quite a while. Bit of guy liner, choker. Yeah.
I can't picture it.
I got some photos and my eyebrows are so plucked, it's untrue, honest to God. And I look back and think, that's not me. Who is that person? I don't recognise him at all. But a guy who's now a drag queen, ironically, came up to me one night and went, Simon, can I just say, like, what's this all about? And I was like, what? And he was like, well, do you know why you had so much attention when you first came out? It's because you were like a proper lad. He said, which suited you. He said, I'm not sure this is the look. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, you can't win. Like, I come out as just myself.
Yes.
In school, I was considered camp. Yeah. In comparison to all the rough and tumble.
And now they're saying you must be bisexual.
I'm too masculine. So now I'm trying to be camp to fit in to the gay scene, and now no one likes me because I'm not that butch twink anymore. Yeah. Very funny.
That's so interesting. So, I wasn't going to ask you this yet, but I'm going to ask you, when did you actually, so going through all of that, when did you actually feel like, well, this is who I am? If you'd gone through those transitions.
So I was with a guy for 9 years, again, a very volatile relationship, very controlling relationship, a person who had massive vulnerability issues and just sort of, put them onto
you.
Me. And upon reflection, all of his exes as well. So, yeah, very damaged individual. I became super vulnerable in that relationship. I don't know why, because I'd been way braver before. I'd gone through, like, in a bit of a sheep, I guess, in some ways, following what was going at the time.
And hence why you wore a choker.
Yeah. So in that relationship, I wasn't myself at all. I couldn't be myself, really. And when I think that was a defining moment, was when we split up. I was like, I can let all that go, because he was really camp, but very aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, almost bipolar in his nature, like two different personalities in one person. And I tried to fit in with what I thought he wanted. So I was not camping my mannerisms or behaviour, but I was like dressed throughout the relationship, really. For those 9 years, I went on and off. One minute I'd be in, jeans and a hoodie, shirt or whatever. And the next minute I'd be wearing makeup. And I don't mean makeup like a drag queen. No. I just mean makeup, guy makeup, with like a really loud shirt or a really fitted shirt. And I just never felt comfortable in my skin. Like whichever way it was. Yeah. So when we split up, that was like a massive
huge
weight on my shoulder. Yeah, huge weight on my shoulder. And I just felt like a huge sigh of relief. Like, now I'm just going to be myself.
Yeah.
And from that point, I'd say, I'm still growing, still learning, still vulnerable in some ways, but way more myself than I've ever been, I guess.
Mark probably brought a lot of that out in you.
Yeah, definitely. Because with meeting Mark was a freedom that was like, I met somebody who doesn't want anything from me other than a relationship. Oh, no, don't cry. But he was just like, you just do you. Do you remember me telling you about the situation where I stayed out all night, even though we were together? Because he was like, he could see how oppressed I'd been or whatever. And my coming out experience wasn't great and blah, blah, blah. And I'd stayed out one night. He'd come home with like 2. I'd stayed out all night because I'd bumped into my friend's nephew, actually, who I hadn't seen for ages. And we stayed out literally all night. And we were going for Sunday lunch with all my family. And I rock up in a taxi, still drunk, buzzing a booze, dressed from last night, 5 minutes before lunch was booked, and walked in. All my family is sat there horrified. Mark's just like, I've been communicating with him.
Yeah, obviously.
Saying, I'll be back when I get back, sort of thing. He's like, just whatever. So I walk in, and one of my sisters said, I can't believe you put up with that. And he actually cut her dead and said, what do you mean put up with that? This is how I met him. Because obviously when I met him, I was going a bit wild. And he was like, why was I going to change him? He wouldn't be the person I met. From that day, I probably milked that a little bit, to be honest.
Absolutely. Still are.
Still are, yeah.
Remember when you said that?
You said I can stay out all night and it's not a problem.
I say that to Nathan. You knew what you were signing up for, love.
And he does. He literally,
he's lush.
He is adorable. And I'm not going to pretend I haven't taken advantage of that. And I do sometimes slap myself and go, you're taking the piss now, Simon.
Yeah.
Because, like, he's gone home at 2 because that's a sensible thing to do, and 5 o'clock he's still going strong. But he actually says, as long as you had a nice time.
You do you.
Yeah, you do you. As long as you had a nice time and you're not being vulnerable, that's fine.
It's not what they say, though, is it? It's how we feel.
Yeah.
Because, like, Nathan would never, ever in a million years be like, you're a twat. He just wouldn't.
No, and Mark wouldn't either.
But sometimes I would want him to, because there's no breaks.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I think, as I'm growing, A, you just can't do it as much as you used to. But B, as I'm growing and aging, I'm getting better, I suppose, at not doing it as much.
Yeah.
As in staying out all night.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, he loves a night out as well, which is good.
Yeah,
because
it's brilliant.
like we were in London obviously for Mike Hoopla, and where our friends went home at 2, we were still going strong at 7 a.m, you know?
9, Simon.
Well, debatable. I'm saying 7, he's saying 9. Neither of us can remember the time. But yeah, so that's great, but also not helpful with the cause. You know, you're only alive once, you know.
Everyone gets asked this question, and it's a bit of a shit question, but I love it because it opens up other avenues.
Go on.
You met him, I believe, I'm not godly in any way, but I believe when you're born, your life's mapped out.
Okay.
Not in a way, because I hate this quote, everything happens for a reason, I can't stand it, it gives me absolute rage. But I just do, and there's twists and turns, and I've only come to realise this like in the last 2 years, because I've been through therapy myself. Do you think he arrived at the right time?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. But weirdly, I don't believe what you...
Yeah.
I don't feel that... I'm going to contradict myself now. I believe that he came at the right time, for whatever reason. Call it the stars align if you want to. But I don't think that your life is mapped out at all. I think every opportunity is there for everyone. So I don't...
Interesting.
Yeah. But I wonder whether you give off a certain energy.
Yes.
So when I ended up in the very vulnerable situation of 2 relationships, actually... one of them was manipulated, so the guy that was way older than me actually split. We only found this out years later. Actually split me and my first boyfriend up on an evening out by telling him a story while I was at the bar. I didn't even know him, never met him before. Telling him a story at the bar. Telling me a story at the bar about him, which caused us to have an argument.
And then you split up.
We split up, and then he swooped in and collected
me.
me,
What a
and we ended
fucking
up in a relationship.
weirdo.
Yeah, what works out even weirder. He used to go out with that boy that he split up from me when that boy was about 16 as well. He was a couple of years older than me, but I only found that out way later. I was only with him for a couple of months. In those months he did some terrible things. I can imagine. But I got out of that quite quick.
Yeah.
So I was obviously very vulnerable at that stage when I ended up then meeting the ex of 9 years.
You were vulnerable till you met Mark. I'm not saying he saved you, because I always say that to Nathan about me, and he doesn't. Like, you've got to save yourself, haven't you? You can't.
What I feel is when I went out with, I'm not going to name any of these exes, but when I went out with that one I was with for 9 years, basically I was in a very vulnerable place. I didn't really want to be with anyone, and they sort of pressured me really into being in a relationship, you know, because I slept with them. And they moved in with me in my flat because they weren't getting on particularly well with their housemate. And I was like, I don't want to live with anyone. And they like made me feel so guilty about that. I let them move in. Ridiculous. Hence why we ended up in this toxic, forced relationship, really. So when I left him, I was adamant I did not want to be with anyone. Wanted to go out and sow my oats and whatever, and just be free and be myself. And then on a night out in Bristol, met Mark, just literally on a night out. Neither of us wants to be in a relationship. So I don't think there was any vulnerability at that stage. I think I was open.
Yes.
And because I wasn't looking, he wasn't looking.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Freer.
I mean? Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, that makes more sense.
So I was giving off a better energy.
Yeah, you weren't like,
which was going to make you meet somebody of a better energy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm a massive believer in energy. You've made me rethink what I believe in now, though.
That's interesting.
I know, because I believed in that for quite a while, but it is what you put out is what you get back.
100%. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Sorry, flipping back.
Sorry?
So take yourself back to when you come out, because it sounds awful. And even
Which coming out though, because there's like 3, isn't there?
Your mum, always the parents and your grandparents, and also when she found condoms. So you're this vulnerable person who's had a chaotic upbringing like you have. I can guarantee there's 70 people out there who felt the same way. What would have you wanted to have been different?
Probably to own myself a little bit more at that stage, and actually the actions be of my doing and my choosing. So rather than being vulnerable to these individuals who are clearly taking advantage, certain people, to have maybe just been a bit more confident myself, to have gone, no, this is not happening, I'm taking charge, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that's probably a lot to do with your upbringing though, because everything is, isn't it, anyway, but...
Yeah.
So what would you say to a parent out there who thinks their kid's gay?
Just give them as much support as you can, but open up the conversation.
That's what I was going to say. Do they ask them?
I'm not a parent, so it's really difficult to say. I would say...
You are. You're an uncle.
I'm an uncle, okay. But
and you're a very good uncle.
Well, I could be better, as we all can. We're all learning and growing. But I'd say, maybe just have the conversation that, you know, first of all, start with letting them know whatever they're going through,
yeah,
you're always going to love them, so they can tell you anything. It doesn't have to be about their sexuality, just that they can tell you anything.
Yeah.
And then, see how that conversation goes, and then just say, if ever you feel in any particular way, or you're attracted to a boy, you're attracted to a girl, you don't know what you are yourself, whatever, please have the conversation and know that there is no judgment here, and I'll make sure I'll support you, I'll look after you, I'll do whatever you want me to do, rather than take the lead. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
because I've always thought that about anything really. Is it a parent's job to, when because you get a vibe, your mum must have had a vibe.
I don't think it's your job to out them or anything, because you've got to be ready yourself. And again, looking back, I've always been gay, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't a choice. It certainly wasn't a choice, because why would you choose to make your life harder? You wouldn't.
Exactly.
But when I knew, I knew. When I didn't know, I didn't know. So people like Mark will say he's known since he was very, very young.
I know, he told me that.
And I've loads of gay people I know have said, I've always known.
I was 5. Yeah.
Or when I was born, whatever. One of our friends who's Russian said that he knew from kindergarten that he was gay.
Wow.
And I'm like, how? And he's like, I just knew. And I'm like, well, but did you even know what gay was at that age? You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have processed those thoughts.
Anyway.
Exactly. So I think everyone's interpretation of what they know is different. Like for me, I knew I was different. I thought there was something wrong with me because so those few friends that I had experiences with as a teenager, they weren't they were sexual, but they weren't sex. If that makes sense.
Yes.
I'm not going to go into too much detail. That can be for another podcast. 18 plus after midnight. No, but they were quite natural, I suppose, looking back now. And I know lots of boys have had those experiences. And in this day and age, I've actually spoken to younger guys who were straight. Who were like, yeah, I did that in school. Experimenting.
It is experimenting.
Yeah. When you don't know yourself and you're just trying things out, doesn't make you gay or straight or anything, So when I experienced those experiences, I became quite attached to those individuals. Now, looking back, it was because I had a crush on them.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I just used to think, why do I care so much? And they never do. I care so much about my male friends. And I probably pushed a lot of boys away looking back.
Because I was
overly invested.
Yes.
I was overly emotionally attached. I'd worry about them. If they hurt themselves, I'd be like, let me clean that up for you and put a bandage on. Do you know what I mean? Which I do with the girls as well.
Yeah.
Quite a caring nature in that sense. But actually, that's not completely normal for lads, to be with each other. So upon reflection, looking back, I can say, well, yeah, that was because I was gay and I had a crush on that boy, actually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Do you know, I wasn't going to ask you this either, but there we go. This is how it flows.
Yeah.
You know when you said you experimented with boys, do you know if any of them are gay now? No.
Well, one of them.
You don't have to name,
no,
obviously.
No, I'm not going to name them. One of them, apparently so, but I didn't know that until recently. And I know that because a friend of mine who is gay said to me, do you know so-and-so? And I was like, yeah, how do you know them? He said, you used to live in their street, didn't you? I was like, yeah, they lived in the same street as me. And he was like, oh, right, because I used to go out with him. And I was like, is he gay? He went, I thought you knew he was gay. I think he's had the conversation maybe about his youthful experiences, and that I was part of that. But I've never had that conversation with him.
No.
So I was like, I didn't even know he was gay, because I know he's on my Facebook, but there's nothing on his Facebook that indicates
that he
he's
was. Yeah, got like a pride flag or anything.
No. I mean, he was always a bit camp upon reflection, and obviously he did certain things with me when we were younger. So, yeah, I just thought he was experimenting. He went on to be straight, like the other two went on to be straight. One of them's a crackhead now, mine, so I don't know whether I did that to him.
Probably because he didn't come out.
Yeah, maybe.
No, we're nearly done. So, what would you say to a 14-year-old boy who thinks he's gay, or even a girl who thinks she's a lesbian, or anyone who's having some kind of identity issues with anything, that they just, basically what you said, I knew I wasn't normal, I knew I was different. What's one piece of advice you'd give them?
Everything is normal.
Yeah.
Everything is normal.
Oh, I got goose pimples. That's such a simplistic thing to say.
Whatever you think you are, just be true to yourself and own it, because you only got one chance, and it's no one else's business anyway, and you'll find your own people, people who love you for you regardless who you are.
They'll find you, actually. Yeah, they turn up at the right
energy
time.
Comes to energy, so
absolutely.
Just be kind to yourself.
So 3 questions. First one, what's a defining moment in your life? And I know, like we said, we've always got many.
So many.
But after this conversation, what comes to mind?
God, there's so many. So many. What, the most important defining moment of my life? Probably leaving my X.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think I'd ever have the confidence to do it. I really didn't.
Did you because I just knew you as my hairdresser at that point. I knew bits, obviously. But did your close friends and family think you would never have had the confidence to leave?
I don't know what anyone thought, because no one... This person was such a manipulative, controlling individual. They controlled everyone in our lives. Controlled everyone in our lives. So I would say that everyone was quite scared of them. Not physically, just because they were mental.
Yeah.
So rather than people having my back, and I'm including my family in this, no one ever said to me, "This person's nuts." Like,
no way.
No one until we split up, and then people were like, "Oh yeah, well, like
God, what power is that?"
Their friends. I mean, this person falls out with everyone to drop the happy, yet manages to maintain relationships, because I think people are literally petrified of them. Not physically, because the way they speak to people, like whether that be their family, their friends, the things they'd say, how angry and enraging they'd come. They'd like, "I'm going to ruin your life. I'll tear you apart. I'm going to tell people this. I'm going to tell people..." Like, wow, like, go and have a little chat with yourself.
Yeah.
And
Simon now.
Yeah, but I would stand up for myself in the relationship and say those things, which would just make
him worse.
Fuel on the fire, and it get violent then, and stuff, and because they couldn't cope with me challenging them. So yeah. That was probably a big defining moment for me, because I didn't think I was ever going to come out of that, if I'm honest, which is so weird to look back on.
It wasn't long after that you met Mark, though, was it?
No, literally months.
Yeah.
Months. But we'd been in a breakup stage for about 3 years at that stage. Like, literally, like, I was going. Bearing in mind, I was still young. They were still in my flat. They still very much were in my family's life. I felt like whatever I did, they were going to ruin me.
Yeah.
I really believed that. And I took that leap of faith. It was like, go on then, ruin me, because at the moment I feel ruined anyway.
Exactly.
So I'll just go, and what's the worst that's going to happen? And actually, it wasn't that bad. It was awful. It wasn't that bad.
No.
Once I blocked their number, I still, up until about last year, I still get the occasional rearing of the ugly
random text messages.
No, because they're blocked, but through other people, or if I bumped into one, I'm like, they're literally like screaming and shouting at me. I'm like, wow, move on.
Yeah.
So that was a very defining moment. But there's multiple, like my mum having a brain hemorrhage, losing my mum, coming out, meeting Mark, so many.
Meeting Mark. Second question, what would you tell your younger self? It's probably similar to what I said
Going
about
back to what I said, I'd say be true to yourself. Don't give too much shit about what other people think of you, because...
No fucks.
Yeah. As long as you're doing right by you, that's the most important thing, because everything else will grow around that. I wish I knew that then.
I spoke to students yesterday in Swansea, and I was coming away and I was chatting to someone. It literally come from nowhere, and I was like, it takes years for you to accept yourself. Oh, I think I'm going to cry. So fucking weird. And then I was driving home and I was like, actually, when I grow up, I want to be me.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I know. And I was like, I have never, ever felt like that. I was like, when I grow up, I want to be so-and-so, and I'd love to be a little bit like that.
That's beautiful. When I grow up, I want to be me. Yeah. I'm not quite there yet.
I don't think many people are, but...
No, that's really lovely.
I feel quite freeing. Yeah, that's what I would tell my
I still got
self.
loads of things I think are probably part of my past that I still need to work on.
It
is,
what I mean? And mine was the same, and you will get there because you're a beautiful human.
Oh, thank you.
Third question, do you have a film, a podcast, a quote or a movie that you would advise that everyone has to listen to, watch or hear once?
Again, many. Podcasts, no, because as you know, last night I watched a bit of yours, and it's the first time I've ever even tried to look at a podcast or listen to a podcast. I am going to start making more of an effort because I quite like the idea of it. I'm just going to pinch two if that's okay. So one would be a book, Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari. It's absolutely mind-blowing, like just a twist on what we thought of humankind versus what actually is the case. So it's a really good read. I definitely recommend that. And then follow him on social media because he's a very intelligent guy, but puts everything in a very enlightening, easy to understand way, I think. And then a quote is from a little book that I saw on the kitchen side once. I think it's called A Golden Key to Happiness. And the quote on the cover is, "Forgiveness is the key to all happiness." And that hit me really hard because I realised what they're saying there is not just about forgiving other people, it's about forgiving yourself. Giving yourself grace. Yeah, so like forgiveness is not a gift to the person you're forgiving, it's a gift to you. I've realised, like, no one's doing well by holding on to anger. It's never going to benefit you. But some people really think that to be angry at that person is teaching them a lesson.
I know.
Well, they're gone moving on to fuck somebody else's life up. So, don't worry about that. You forgiving you and you forgiving others is definitely a way forward to making you happier.
It is, because you've got a lot to forgive.
In myself as well, because I've been an arsehole on times in my life. And I can't blame anyone else. Like,
you could sit there and be like, yeah, well, it was because of my
upbringing. Yeah, I can understand that things led to it, but at the end of the day, I had choices, and I could have chosen not to react like that. In drink, you've seen me drunk, I can be really funny, but I can also be a really sarcastic twat, which I think is hilarious, and people in my very close circle be like, yeah, egging me on. But people on the outside of that circle, who are the ones that I'm necessarily taking the piss out of because I think it's funny, not to their face, by the way, just, under my breath, whatever. That's a trait of me that I'm really trying to let go of, So I need to
you don't like
have
it.
more water with it. Because it's not a nice thing to do, like laughing
but you're
at
not
other
like
people's.
that, though.
It's not my nature in the daytime. No, it's not sober, Simon.
And that's their first impression of you, which is, because that's not the real you at all.
So when I drink, I'm trying to have more water in between on a weekend.
And give yourself more grace and forgiveness.
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
yesterday. What happened yesterday is like, did you have a nice time?
Yeah.
I've loved this. You're definitely coming back.
That
on
was quite
again.
easy, actually. I was really nervous.
Yay!
And it's over an hour.
See? It just flows, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, you're easy to talk to, that's why.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having
Evan
me.
come up with a brilliant idea. Next time we should do it in the salon.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this podcast is literally about my hair. So every time my hair looks bad, I'm like, I should have had a haircut. So the next one we'll do in the salon.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Happy for that.
Thank you. We're
cool,
done.
Thank you.